I wanted to make this video to explain to black people and minorities, particularly the blacks, um, what white people think about them. And this is going to be totally honest, and I don't think honest white people will disagree. But for the most part, I'd say 90-95% of people really don't care what your color is. They look at you as a person. All you have to do is look at workplaces where blacks and whites work together, and you'll see camaraderie, you'll see support, you'll see friendships. Um, there's no real animosity, there's no real racism in the workplace. But, white people are very judgmental, and rightly so. I think every race is. But us being in the majority, we do, our opinions do impact people more. But what we look at, for the most part, I'm talking about people, on the right of center. We look at achievement. We look at taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, being law abiding, living within a civil society, trying to advance that society. And, we have a term for other whites who don't meet those needs. We call them white trash. If you look at, Cops or any of those types of shows, the majority of white people have disdain for that crowd. We're outraged by levels of domestic violence. We're outraged by whites living on welfare, not supporting their families, abandoning their children. And we hold everyone else to the same standard. If you look at levels of criminality within the black community, crime statistics, there's a reason why the treatment is the way it is. And unfortunately, the vast majority of blacks are good, law-abiding citizens that, that do work hard, that do take care of their families, that are helping advance society forward. And, those that break the law, unfortunately, make the innocent associated with the guilty. So if you've got 13% of the population committing the vast majority of violent crime and murder in the United States, it's only natural that people are skeptical, and they put in certain precautions because, based on the statistics, the odds are that there's going to be a problem. Now, my heart goes out to those who've worked hard, achieved, have taken advantage of the opportunities in our society, that they are, treated the same of the potential risk or threat from the minority that are causing all the trouble. And I don't know how you fix that unless you fix the problems with that minority. And see, the thing is, the same problems that occur to a certain degree occur within that white trash community. High levels of, dropout, teenage pregnancy rates, child abandonment, all the problems, living on welfare, and all that stuff. So, white people can be called racist, But, if the black community had uh, a problem where the number of redheads in society were doing what blacks are doing against blacks, they would take the same approach. They would be skeptical of redheads. They would cross the street when a redhead showed up. They would follow them in a store. Women would clutch their purse. It's only natural. And if you want to change racism, as you call it, the change has to come from within. Because we don't care what color you are. We care what kind of person you are. And if you look at white racism against Asians, East Indians, name any other minority that doesn't have the involvement in those negative things, you'll see that it's non-existent. And for a so-called racist country, for people of all colors to be able to achieve and to have higher earning power than most whites, there's no racism that they can claim. There's no barriers that they point out. The only barriers are, like in the case of Asian students, where they actually penalize them on their SAT scores. They devalue their score because there would be too many of them in Ivy League schools. So that's one instance where we actually hold people back, which is racist as well, but in the other direction. So, you can scream whatever you want, that it's, living conditions and it's poverty and it's all these different things. But you have to ask yourself, what's your leadership? In the cities that are predominantly black, you have black mayors, black governors, black administration in almost every area, and your situation hasn't improved. All Democrats. So you have to ask yourself, why the people who claim to be able to successfully solve your problems have let you down for all these years? And you have to be honest. You have to ask yourself, why aren't businesses pouring in to our communities when, if you took black earning power, if you took the collective income of the black community, it would be the 9th richest country in the world. But why don't businesses rush down to your neighborhoods? Because they get looted, they get robbed. Maybe that's a change that has to happen within. You can make all the excuses you want that these businesses are racist, but they would be more than happy to pour into the communities so that the people didn't have to travel, they could shop locally, they could employ locally, and your neighborhoods could thrive. But they don't want to run the risk. That's a you problem. That's not a white man problem. And, when I was a child, I listened to Martin Luther King. I listened to the Reformed Malcolm X. And they talked about, judge a man by his character. And for the vast majority of whites, and I don't speak for all whites, but for the vast majority, I believe that they do. So, until you fix things internally, I don't see the situation changing. I see it getting worse. And if you think there's racism that's holding you back, look at all the successful people within your community who, as soon as they get an education and they get a profession, they move out. You'd think that they would renovate a house or buy a house and try and improve the neighborhood and start businesses in that neighborhood. They move out. You have to ask yourself why. And if you're not willing to, riot, loot, do all the things that make the majority of Americans look at you and say, typical. This is what they do. Nobody in his right mind is criticizing Ben Carson. I mean, look what the man achieved. Johns Hopkins is not a little county hospital. It's world renowned. The man became the head of pediatric neurosurgery. Okay? And he's not looked up to as much as a rapper or a LeBron James, who have skills that really, they're inborn talents, they're God-given talents, but they didn't have to struggle. They practiced. They exploited their talent. God bless them. I like them. But tell me that you don't want to celebrate a man who did 10 or 12 years of university, who worked at his craft, and became the head of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. I mean, staggering. Look at Clarence Thomas. Look at Thomas Sowell. These men worked hard against whatever barriers you think might be there. They worked hard. And look at how they're regarded. If Clarence Thomas came to most of those neighborhoods, I don't know if he'd safely get out. And he's a role model. In the same way, we whites, they celebrate their sports heroes and their actors and performers. But we have tons of role models that worked hard. We encourage our kids to become doctors and lawyers, not rappers and basketball players. And we know the work that it's going to take. They know the work that it's going to take. But in the end, the goal's worth it. So you can lie to yourself and say that we're in the way because we look at you at a certain time, or a woman clutches her purse. But achievement comes from the individual working hard. Doesn't matter what your color. Doesn't matter what your race. And, another thing that kind of shoots a hole in this whole oppression racism theory is blacks that come from Africa as immigrants, Caribbean blacks, are doing 58% better than American-born blacks. So you have to ask yourself, if we were a racist country, how do they achieve? Well, I'm going to wrap this up, but I think you need a better PR system, because yelling and screaming, it might make you noticed, but it doesn't get you listened to. And with that, have a good day.